Hey everyone, it's Road here again. And as many of you know, I run a services company that helps billion-dollar brands level up their digital experiences. So, over the past few days, I've been really diving deep into how AI can help automate our internal workflows, both simple and complex. And I thought, why not share what I've learned? So, in this video, I'm going to walk you through exactly how I built an AI workflow that actually connects WhatsApp, a lot of our internal databases, and OpenAI in this case, to actually execute a workflow. So my hope is that this has been part of a series that I've been sharing a lot of these experiences because I've been hearing more and more because our company, we spend thousands of hours a week building out these AI workflows and different innovations. And more people are asking me, hey, can I share? So I'm going to be sharing a little bit more as I come across things that I think would be interesting to learn. All right, so here we go. I think what's really important to start off with is just to make sure we've got a little bit of context. So here's a high level workflow diagram of how this actually works, and I've color coded it for three stages. The we got You guys might not know this, but I'm colorblind, so I'm not even kind of sure what color this is. This is according to this aqua. So we've got aqua, sky, and peach. So aqua is the the simplest kind of workflow. You layer in peach for a more complex workflow, and then finally you have what color was this again? Sky for the most complex workflow. So let's talk about it. So you log into ChatGPT or Gemini or Claude. What do? You're a user, you make a prompt, it goes into a model, and it gives you a response. That's the simplest workflow that you might use. A slightly more complex workflow, well, you might ask it a second question. In that case, it's keeping some sort of context. And then the user will then, you'll pass it, it'll go back and get the context, it'll feed that into the model, and then you get a response. If you're doing even something more complex, you might layer in some file uploads, right? So now you've got your user, you've got some context. It'll actually take the information that's in your files, and then the model will work. In this case, maybe OpenAI or Gemini, and it'll get you a response. And then you can layer it on even more if you've ever built a custom GPT or a gem in Gemini, where you'll give it a custom instruction set. And what that custom instruction set is doing is you're passing in your prompt, it's getting added to the context. The model will then take your custom instruction set, combine it all. It'll take your files, combine it with that, do its magic, and then get you a response. And then we get into the final piece, which you might need for more corporate workflows or enterprise workflows, is you do all that, but then that user response might need some sort of pre-processing. You might need to add some data to it that's coming from your internal systems. You also might want to go grab some data that's in some databases. And then you'll layer it in with all this other kind of step workflow one and workflow two that we talked about. And then the model will give a response. And then maybe an even more complex workflow, you want to take that response and post process it. Again, maybe do some more complication, more business logic to it, or maybe even add in some more data. And then that would get the response that the user gets. So level one, user model response. Level two, you can layer in context, upload files, add custom instructions. And then level three of a complex workflow would be you can add pre-processing logic, you can add data from databases, and you can add post-processing logic. All of this is what goes into building an app for a workflow. So now let's talk about how that looks. All right, so keeping those three workflows in mind to create a more complex workflow, let me give you a quick look at what you're seeing here. So I'm using a workflow editor to create an app. And ultimately, this app's really simple. It's going to take a message from WhatsApp. I've created a WhatsApp business account. It's going to do some pre-processing to it. It's going to go and talk to an AI agent. In this case, it's going to be talking to OpenAI, ChatGPT. It's pulling data from three of our systems. It's our US payroll information, something that we call the bus metrics. That's basically our way of across our business units, capturing all the data about our business units, like our gross margins, our profits, our costs, etc. And the allocation details is from our booking system, and it really just talks about every single employee contractor in the company and how many hours a month they're allocated, what their costs are, what the revenues are, etc. And so what's this thing going to do? I can ask it a question. And what I want to do is being able to understand my question, go to my systems and give me an answer and then respond to me in my WhatsApp chat. And so before I show you a demo, let's relate this workflow to the workflow I just talked about. So this is the input. So if you look here, we said input, model, response. If I was just going to do that, this is my input, this is my model, this is my response. So I ask the question WhatsApp, it goes into my model, and it gives me a response. Now, if I wanted to layer on context, files, and custom instructions, that comes in here. So let's talk about giving it. I'm not giving it any custom files, but I am giving it custom instructions. So I can open up my instructions. This is my custom instruction set. It goes into and explains what each one of those databases does, and that's my custom instruction. So when it gets my question, I give it context to understand where to go get that data, and where to look up that data. And then in terms of what we talked about context, now that's a little bit more tricky. Now you can just rely on an agent, or an open AI in this case, to remember what you're saying. But now think about it in a production work case. When you're talking about open AI, it knows to keep context entry because you keep on opening new chats, and every time you open a new chat, that's the context. But it can't go into your old chat and give you context unless you explicitly tell it to. So now this turns into a pre-processing. So what I'm really doing here is I'm going out and I've created a database, in this case, Google Sheets, and I've kept a history of all my chats by phone number. And so what this does is I now do pre-processing. My pre-processing will say, okay, I've got a request, I've got a message that I've sent. Go out and pull all of the existing chat history for this phone number, and then add my new chat to the old chat. Then you pass that into the AI agent. The AI agent is going to go, and now process that, and then it comes into what my final step of the workflow, the more complex, which is I will add some post processing, and I will add some external data. So post processing and data, what I'm doing is I've now sent in that consolidated message into my OpenAI, but I need to go get data, and so I've connected 3 databases to it, and then on the post processing, I take the response from the agent, and I add. I have to take that response and I have to add it back in to my chat history. So again, to make it simple again, I need to I give it a question. I go and get all of the historical data that I have for that phone number, add it to the question. I pass it to OpenAI. OpenAI will then go and look into my databases, answer the question if it can, respond to me, but at the same time, go and put all of that information back into my database. So let's see this working then. I'm going to just show it to you in this way. This is the database that I'm going to ask it to query. This is our allocation database. And essentially, I'm going to be asking about the allocation on certain employees. So in this particular case, how many hours is Enrique allocated in January? In this case, it would be 176. Now, I'm not going to tell it what database to go to. I'm not going to do any of that. I'm just going to ask it. So let's go ahead and see if this works. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to ask about somebody named Juliana Woolworth, and here's my WhatsApp. So what was Juliana Woolworth's allocation in January? And here we're going to see it executing. So you can see here, it's executing in the background. 8 seconds. It's going through this entire workflow. And I got a response. Let's see what it said. It said, hey, Juliana was allocated 126 hours. And now I wanted to have that history. So let's take a look at what just happened here. So it figured out that this is the database it needs to go to. I don't know where Juliana is here. Juliana, where are you? There you are. There it is, 126 hours in Jan. And then it went, and you can see it just created an array where it said, the user said, what was Juliana Woolworth allocation in Jan? And the assistant responded with, hey, Rohit, it was 126 hours. And that's exactly what you saw in my WhatsApp. Now, just for the sake of expediency, I'm going to ask, well, what about Enrique? And so I asked it, the message got sent. It's going through the workflow again. Give it some time here. I might edit this part out, we'll see. And I got a response, and it now says, hey, his allocation was 176 hours in January. Let's go double check that. I'll bring that over here. I go to n8n. Not letting me check. Oh, there we go. And there you go, 176 hours in January. And then you can also see that it added on. Well, let me refresh this. Looks like I got a bug. It didn't add on, but it was supposed to go in there and actually add on the amount of hours that it put in there for n8n. Anyways, I've got a bug. That's fun. And that's the thing about doing demos. You're always going to have a bug, I guess. But what you see here is that's what goes into a workflow. So now if you're thinking about automating your workflows at work, this might not be a very practical example of something that you'd want to create, but it does give you an example of what's possible out there, right? So a typical website, when you log into chatgpt.com, you'll go through workflow one, user model response. If you're a little bit more advanced, you may layer in context, some custom instructions, and upload a file. But to truly build a workflow, you're going to want to be able to do pre-processing, add custom data, and do post-processing. And you can make these now workflows as complex as possible, or as complex as you need. Now I'm using a tool here called n8n. We also have used tools in Google, like you can use Agent Space. Obviously, Salesforce has theirs, which is Agent Force, and they all provide the same type of context, just at different layers of enterprise grade ready. So Agent Force would probably be the most from Salesforce. Enterprise ready, it provides an entire security layer. Then you've got the Google Agent Space. It's much more robust than n8n. It allows you to connect to many other kind of applications, but it's also a little bit more difficult to use. And then you have n8n. We've used all of these. They're all great. And they can all do some really powerful stuff. But hopefully that helps you understand a little bit more about workflows and agents and creating agentic workflows. You can imagine now I could have one agent here call another agent, and the workflows can grow and grow and grow. Let me know if you want to see a video about that. But hopefully you enjoyed this. Hopefully this brought some value. And let me know if you have any questions.